Hello, my name is James Idiporminich, and today my team and I will be presenting on the Boundaryless organizations. And my team and I consist of me, James Idiporminich, Edgar Wright, and Shayna May Slight. Next slide, please. So the overview. So these are the things that we'll be talking about today. First, we'll be going over the introduction of defining, explaining what the Boundaryless organization is. Then we'll be talking about the advantages as well as the disadvantages of this organization. And then finally, we'll be talking about the effectiveness of the boundaryless organization. Next slide, please. All right, we'll start off with the introduction for what the boundaryless organization is. And it is a contemporary approach in organization design. It is an organization that is not defined or limited by the horizontal, vertical, or external boundaries imposed by a predefined structure. So this phrase, boundaryless organization, is a term coined by Jack Welch, which is a former CEO of General Electric. And his quote says, "Our dream for the 1990s is a boundaryless company where we knock down the walls that separate us from each other on the inside and from our key constituencies on the outside." Next slide, please. So another key factor that comes into play whenever shifting an existing organization to a boundaryless organization are social boundaries. So social boundaries so the three that we identified that needs to be overcome to make an organization function correctly are role-based barriers, departmental or functional barriers, and geographic boundaries. So role-based barriers happen as a result of seniority levels. It's easy for a company to tell every employee that they're leaders, but however, in practice, it will always be difficult to approach someone with a higher rank and speak openly. And the second barrier is the departmental or functional barriers, which has to do with departments and functions. People tend to hang out with those they feel most comfortable with. So basically, marketing people stick with marketing people, sales with sales, and such and such. And lastly, the geographic barriers is has to do with barriers that come up because of not being in the same physical location. And the solution to this is through utilization of technology to really communicate ideas and solutions to each other. So these principles in shifting an organization to become boundaryless is about shifting perspective from telling people what to do to getting them excited to want to do things. Next slide, please. So now we'll be talking about the advantages of this organization. So first off, there are two obvious advantages of having a boundaryless organization. The first is obviously as the name goes, the lack of physical boundaries. Under a traditional structure, physical limitations hinder free communication and collaboration. But under boundaryless organization, communication is much easier and can be expanded outside a local home office and extend to different zones and countries. And this will allow the organization to outsource, to collaborate and work together more easily. This also allows the organization to break down the traditional work hours so they can work around the clock or whenever it's flexible for them. Another big advantage of a boundaryless organization is the breakdown of roles and titles. Despite efforts to make employees feel comfortable and ensure that ideas and thoughts can be discussed freely, a low-level employee working with a high-level employee is almost always accompanied with some tension or stress. But when breakdown of roles happen, a more comfortable environment is created. so employees at all levels are able to communicate more freely and openly. This will create an environment that fosters more creativity, collaboration, and ultimately better productivity and success for the company. Next slide, please. So now we're going to be talking about the disadvantages of boundaryless organization. There are times when a complete breakdown of roles and boundaries can be problematic, and especially with a more relaxed relationship among coworkers, um, can also come a more relaxed feeling about responsibilities. Oftentimes, even within a boundaryless organization, a certain degree of hierarchy is required to provide the right amount of focus and leadership. Boundaries can provide this structure, and roles keep the structure that can often be necessary in making decisions and keeping members focused on the work that needs to happen to finish. A conclusion can be made that the advantages and disadvantages show a mixture of both structure and boundaryless should be considered. There's really no single perfect method that will ensure the greatest success, um, but the pros and cons should be weighed and applied um, as needed, really, and as necessary. Next slide, please.
This portion of the presentation will be about the effectiveness of a boundaryless organization. A boundaryless organization is based upon interdependency and trust. If either one of these characteristics is lacking in the organization, then it will not work. There's a collective ownership of the company product. No one person is responsible for successes, and conversely, there are no scapegoats. A company that works in design or other types of creative thinking environments will do well as a boundaryless organization. People in the company should feel comfortable in a chaotic, free-form workplace. Relationships within the organization are essential. People who will work well in their or people who work in their own bubble will not do well. They will most likely find themselves without any work to do. This is because this sort of organization requires that everybody communicates freely and openly with each other. Um, Company silos are able to be broken down and people can work together. The marketing, sales, and engineering people are together on the same team. There's no not my job mentality. Everyone has information that can be relevant to anyone else trying any to what anyone else is trying to accomplish. The organization should be in the same physical location. It should be an environment where an incredible amount of networking is possible. There will need to be a lot of communication. People could work together over distance, but there will need to be ways they can communicate quickly, easily, and unencumbered as possible. They will also need a strong set of core values and a strong vision that will facilitate being on the same page in conversations and decision making. All in all, this style of communication or the style of organization for a workplace works very well when people are outgoing and willing to work hard with each other, as long as they are willing to have the conversations they need to and not just send emails. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. And here are a few of the sources that we've used for this. We hope you have a good night.